If someone handed you a grocery list from 1985, you would not recognize half of it. Not because the handwriting was bad, but because the food itself no longer exists. Entire aisles of products that American families depended on, that kids begged their parents for, that sat in every refrigerator and pantry in the country, simply disappeared, and most people never even noticed them leave. The 1980s were a strange and wonderful time for American food. Neon colors, artificial flavors, and marketing campaigns that would never fly today created some of the most beloved and bizarre products this country has ever seen. Some of those products deserved to vanish, and some deserved better. All of them tell a story about who Americans were and what they were eating during that unforgettable decade. Here are 20 foods that did not survive the transition into modern America. Jell-O pudding pops were everywhere in the 1980s. These frozen treats were not popsicles, and they were not ice cream. They were something in between, with a creamy pudding texture that coated the tongue in a way nothing else could replicate. The chocolate ones were legendary. Kids would come inside from playing in the summer heat and grab one from the freezer. They were marketed heavily on television, and they became one of the defining snacks of the decade. When production shifted and the recipe changed in the 1990s, the magic was gone. The product lingered for a while under different manufacturers, but it was never the same. The original pudding pop that millions of kids grew up eating quietly vanished from freezer cases across America. Buc Wheats cereal sat on breakfast tables in households across the country. This maple-flavored cereal had a taste that was completely unique, sweet, but with an almost earthy undertone from the buckwheat. It did not look glamorous. The pieces were small and plain, but the flavor kept people coming back. General Mills discontinued it, and unlike flashier cereals, nobody launched a campaign to save it. It just slipped away, leaving behind a generation of adults who still remember exactly what it tasted like but cannot find anything to replace it. Space food sticks were a holdover from the space-age enthusiasm of the late 1960s and the early 1970s, but they were still available into the 1980s. These chewy, stick-shaped snacks came in flavors like chocolate, peanut butter, and caramel. The packaging promised the same nutrition astronauts relied on. Kids ate them believing they were consuming something futuristic and scientific. As the novelty of the space program faded and new snack bars entered the market, space food sticks disappeared without ceremony. A marathon bar was 8 inches of braided caramel covered in chocolate. The entire selling point was that the bar was so long and so chewy that it took forever to eat. The ruler printed on the wrapper let kids measure while they chewed. In 1981, Mars discontinued the marathon bar in the United States. It was simply gone, no replacement, no reformulation. Just an empty spot on the candy rack. People who remember the marathon bar talk about it with a fondness that borders on grief. Priazzo was Pizza Hut's attempt at an Italian pie in the mid-1980s. It was a deep-dish, double-crusted pizza filled with meat, cheese, and sauce. The thing was enormous and heavy, and it took nearly half an hour to prepare. That preparation time was its downfall. Fast food customers wanted their food fast, and waiting 30 minutes in a Pizza Hut did not fit the business model. By the late 1980s, Priazzo was pulled from menus nationwide. People who tried it remember it as one of the best things Pizza Hut ever made, which makes its disappearance even more frustrating. If you are enjoying this trip through the foods that shaped a generation and want to explore more stories about how Americans really lived, consider subscribing. There are so many more decades and details to uncover. Carnation breakfast bars were the original meal replacement before protein bars took over. These came in flavors like chocolate chip, peanut butter, and chocolate crunch. They were marketed to busy families who did not have time to sit down for breakfast. Mothers packed them in lunch boxes. Teenagers grabbed them on the way out the door. They were discontinued in the early 1990s, replaced eventually by a wave of granola and energy bars that never quite captured the same simple appeal. Keebler tato skins were chips shaped like potato skins, dusted with flavors such as sour cream and chives or cheese and bacon. They were everywhere at parties and in packed lunches. The taste was salty and addictive, and the shape made them feel more sophisticated than a regular chip. Keebler stopped making them, and while other brands have tried similar products, none have matched the original. Reggie bars were a candy bar named after baseball legend Reggie Jackson. Introduced in 1978, it was a round disc of chocolate, caramel, and peanuts. Thousands were given away at Yankee Stadium on opening day. By the mid-1980s, as Jackson's playing career wound down, so did the candy bar. It was a product tied entirely to one man's fame, and when that fame cooled, the candy followed. Pepsi AM was released in 1989, designed specifically for people who wanted cola in the morning instead of coffee. It had more caffeine than regular Pepsi, and it was marketed as an alternative to the morning coffee routine. Americans were not ready for the concept. Drinking soda at breakfast still carried a stigma that no amount of marketing could overcome. Pepsi AM lasted about a year before being pulled from shelves entirely. Royal Crown Draft Cola was RC Cola's attempt at a premium product in the late 1980s. It came in a glass bottle, and it was marketed as having a fresher taste. In a market dominated by Coca-Cola and Pepsi, RC, Cola was already fighting for shelf space. A premium version of a third-place cola was a tough sell. The product disappeared quickly and took some of RC Cola's momentum with it. SpaghettiOs with sliced franks were technically never fully discontinued, but the original formulation that 1980s kids remember, the one with the specific taste of those soft little hot dog coins mixed into that sweet tomato sauce, was quietly reformulated. What sits on shelves today carries the same name but does not taste the same. Anyone who opens a can expecting that exact childhood flavor will be disappointed. The original recipe is gone. C-3PO's cereal was a tie-in with the Star Wars franchise. The cereal pieces were shaped like figure eights, and they tasted like a sweetened oat cereal. It launched in 1984 and was gone by 1987. The tie between entertainment and breakfast cereal was strong in the 1980s, and once the immediate marketing push ended, the product disappeared. Kids who ate it for 3 years remember it vividly. Everyone else has no idea it existed. Howard Johnson's restaurants were once an American institution, recognized by their orange roofs and consistent menu of fried clams, ice cream, and comfort food. By the 1980s, the chain was in steep decline. The restaurants closed one by one across the country. The last Howard Johnson's restaurant held on until remarkably recently, but the chain as Americans knew it in its prime was finished by the end of the decade. An entire restaurant experience, not just a single product, vanished from the American landscape. Clearly Canadian was a flavored sparkling water that came in a teardrop-shaped glass bottle. The flavors were fruity and sweet, and the packaging was beautiful. It was everywhere in the late 1980s and the early 1990s. Every corner store, every vending machine, every school cafeteria. Then it was gone. The brand attempted to come back years later through crowdfunding, but the original wave of Clearly Canadian was a product of its time, a moment when flavored water felt exotic and new. Quisp cereal had actually been around since the 1960s, but it lingered into the early 1980s before being pulled from most markets. The saucer-shaped pieces had a sweet corn flavor that was distinct from anything else on the cereal aisle. The alien mascot on the box gave it personality. Quisp developed an almost cult following among people who remembered it. It has resurfaced occasionally in limited runs, but the everyday presence it once had on grocery shelves is long gone. Borden's milk products were stamped with the face of Elsie the cow. Borden was a household name in the 1980s, producing milk, ice cream, and dairy products found in refrigerators across America. The company went through corporate troubles in the 1990s, and the brand fractured. Elsie the cow and the Borden name faded from dairy cases. A piece of American food identity, one that families had trusted for generations, quietly left the scene. Original New York Seltzer was not actually from New York, and it was not traditional seltzer. It was a flavored soft drink in a clear bottle, and it became wildly popular in the mid-1980s. Flavors such as vanilla cream and raspberry were sold by the case. The brand captured the decade's obsession with image and style. When the novelty wore off and competition increased, original New York Seltzer could not keep up. The bottles stopped appearing, and another piece of 1980s beverage culture was gone. Frozen pudding in a cup from the grocery store freezer section was a staple that most people have forgotten entirely. These were small cups of frozen pudding sold alongside ice cream. They were cheap, simple, and satisfying. As the frozen dessert market expanded with fancier options, these basic pudding cups were pushed out. Nobody mourned them at the time, but people who remember them wonder why something so simple and good had to disappear. What defined American food in the 1980s was experimentation. Companies were willing to try anything: name a candy bar after a baseball player, put cola in a breakfast bottle, or shape a cereal like a spaceship. Some of these experiments became classics. Most of them did not survive. The foods that vanished after the 1980s tell us something about that era. Americans were optimistic about their choices, willing to try new things, and deeply loyal to the products they loved. The grocery store was an adventure. The candy aisle was full of surprises. The freezer section held treasures that would not last. For anyone who remembers reaching for a pudding pop on a summer afternoon or tearing open a marathon bar after school, these were not just foods. They were pieces of a life that existed in a very specific window of American history. And once that window closed, no amount of nostalgia could bring them back. For those with memories of these flavors, there is always more history to explore.